We will now discuss the second family of explanations for business cycles. These are explanations that originate in the contributions of John Maynard Keynes and Michael Kalecki, made in the 1930s during the Great Depression. Keynes and Kalecki were interested in situations where total, or what we now call aggregate demand for goods and services in an economy was weak, particularly situations where investment by enterprises is flagging. To them, problems with aggregate demand were the key to understanding recessions and the mass unemployment that accompanies them. Their explanations draw on two things. First, they rely on a particularly important and unavoidable interdependence between all individuals in an economy. In any economy, every single person's expenditures are somebody else's revenue. Whenever I spend $1, the rest of the economy receives $1. Now, the seemingly simple fact can ensure that the actions of individuals end up having unintended and even perverse effects at the systemic or macroeconomic level. This includes what Keynes called the paradox of thrift and the potentially destabilizing relationship between investment and profits that Kalecki pointed to. Second, Keynes also relied on arguments about the reasons individuals find it in their interest to hold on to money for long periods of time. This is known as his theory of liquidity preference. Now, the video in this module's supplemental readings about austerity offers a great illustration of the paradox of thrift. That is, the possibility that as a large economic agent, like a government, or as large numbers of economic agents, like enterprises, banks, or households, try to become more thrifty and to accumulate bigger cash holdings by spending less relative to their income, their very actions prevent them from succeeding. And that's because large decreases in spending also ensure there are large decreases in revenues. Let's consider a simple example. Imagine there's an economy where everything is going well. It's operating at a level that purposefully uses all of the available resources at sustainable rates. It's producing all of the things that members want and need, and everybody's employed. Now, let's imagine also that everybody in this economy is planning on continuing to do exactly what they have been doing. Buy the same inputs, produce and sell the same outputs, etc. To keep this very simple, we'll say this is an economy with three agents, or people, or businesses, named A, B, and C. Each one of them spends $10,000 per year. Individual A buys $10,000 worth of goods from individual B. Individual B buys $10,000 worth of goods from individual C. And individual C buys $10,000 worth of goods from individual A. Each agent then starts the year with $10,000 and finishes with $10,000. Now, suppose agent A decides to spend less because, say, they would like to have some extra cash set aside in case of an emergency. Say they want to have an extra $4,000 by the end of the year. In order to try to do this, they decide to spend less than before. They decide to spend only $6,000 buying things from B. What happens as a result of that? Well, as the year starts, B notices that there is less demand for its products from A. Now let's suppose that B is really good at forecasting, and they quickly come to anticipate that A, in fact, is only going to spend $6,000 this year, not the usual $10,000. As a result, B will have to adjust their plans. They then cut their spending plan from $10,000 to $6,000. They're very good at forecasting, in line with the expectations that they now have about what A is going to do. Now, this cut in spending by B, of course, has the same effect on C that the cut by A had on B. As a result, C will quickly also adjust their annual plans and plan to spend only $6,000 buying things from A. That means that at the end of the year, A will have spent $6,000 and received $6,000, leaving them exactly with the $10,000 that they started at the end of the year, not the $14,000 that they had hoped to finish the year with. Not only do they end up failing to build up a bigger cash reserve, but as a result of their attempts, the economy shrank from being an economy where there was $30,000 a year of gross spending to an economy where there's only $18,000 worth of gross spending. Now, what would happen if after all of this, A dug in their heels and tried to cut spending again to meet their target? What would happen if B and C also tried to become thrifty at the same time as well? Well, it will be impossible for all of them to succeed in ending up with more than $10,000. And as they each try to achieve that, they'll take economic activity to a standstill. Keynes and Kalecki understood this very well and worried about situations like these. Now, why do situations like this arise? Well, Keynes pointed to two important instances where individual self-interest may push people or businesses to act like Agent A in the example, setting into motion destabilizing downward movements in the macroeconomy. One instance arises when agents become concerned about uncertainty and the possibility that they'll face demands for immediate payment for things. If you don't have cash at hand when others demand immediate payment, you go bankrupt. To avoid that, people and enterprises facing uncertainty typically need to hold cash. Another instance arises when investors have reason to believe that asset prices will fall, in which case it is better for them to hold their wealth as money and wait for the price to fall before investing. In both of these instances, agents will move to become more liquid. That is, they will move to try to hold more money. And by doing that, they may upend the overall performance of the economy. Kalecki understood a couple of additional things. Like everybody else, he understood that capitalist enterprises invest based on the prospect of making profits in the future. But he also understood that the total measure of profits being generated at any given point in time depends on how much investment is taking place in the economy at that time. More investment, more business expenditures, more hiring, more consumption expenditures, they all mean that enterprises sell more goods and book more profits. So the level of investment today depends on individual expectations, ultimately, about the level of investment in the future. It also, by the way, helps generate profits on investments made in the past. So if enterprises anticipate that investment levels will be low tomorrow, they'll cut down on investment today. That in turn may help ensure that the profits that are realized today on past investment are disappointing. And that in turn may reinforce expectations of a downturn, contributing to the kind of downward spiral that we just discussed. Alternatively, if you could somehow guarantee today that aggregate investment levels will be high tomorrow, then investment levels will be high today. But you see, that requires levels of coordination and trust across individual capitalists that cannot be generally sustained. Even if all enterprises were to declare today that they will invest aggressively tomorrow, everybody in the system knows that if any single enterprise does not find it in their self-interest to invest aggressively tomorrow, well, it will not do so. This inability to coordinate investment commitments in a decentralized economy is a recurring source of macroeconomic disruptions, according to Kalecki. We have just discussed the paradox of thrift and Keynes's views on cash flows and aggregate demand. We also explored Kalecki's understanding of the relationship between investment and profits and how it creates potential problems of coordination in investment decisions. We can now turn to the final family of explanations for the business cycle, those pointing to financial instability.